You have 10 minutes to clear your desk, he barked. Not Mr. Rutherford, not Dad, just that. His voice snapped across the room like a belt against drywall. It echoed off the glass, through the floor-ceiling windows of the 17th floor boardroom we built together. Except now, the only thing being built was my funeral pyre. I looked around at the faces I used to manage, mentor, laugh with over vending machine coffee and late-night budgets. Now they just sat, stiff-spined, unsure whether to breathe. Then I saw Carter, leaning against the frame like he was posing for discount whiskey ad, smirking like he'd just keyed my car and wanted me to say thank you. I didn't say a word, not at first. I just calmly closed my laptop, unplugged the charger, slid it into my leather satchel like I wasn't hearing my father-in-law gut me in front of 35 people and the company Slack channel. HR is on Zoom, he added, like that somehow made it more official. Let me back up before we get to the part where I put my boot through Carter's career. Because this story doesn't start in that boardroom, it starts 10 years earlier, in a backyard wedding where I said I do to the youngest son of a logistics dynasty and accidentally honeymooned my way into a job. I joined Cargo Quotient as a favor, or that's what they told themselves. Help us out for a quarter, get the team organized, see what you can do about the East Coast branch. A quarter turned into a decade. A mess of regional contracts turned into a national expansion. I built the East Coast office from a beige closet in New Haven with 3 interns and a mouse problem. I negotiated warehousing deals in Alabama, optimized fleet routes through Pittsburgh winters, and smoothed out a union standoff in Newark using nothing but catered bagels and a single threat to call the press. I did all that while the real Rutherford boys held leadership offsites that mostly involved cigars, golf, and questionable motivational speakers. But I was never really family. They smiled in photos but never called me family. I wasn't born into the Rutherford name, I married it. That made me ornamental. A shiny PR-friendly ring on their legacy, but not something they'd hand real power to. Not unless they had to. It's wild, isn't it? Can double a company's revenue, triple retention, survive 3 recessions, and still be referred to as Carter's sister-in-law on the investor call. And Carter, let's talk about that walking ball of Axe body spray and unearned confidence. He'd always assumed he'd take over one day. It was his divine birthright. Never mind the fact that he once tried to expand our shipping operation into Canada without checking whether our trucks could pass emissions standards there. Or the time he paid a vendor $800,000 over market rate because he liked their font. I tried not to ruffle feathers. I stayed polite, professional. I played nice with people who didn't know the difference between inventory churn and a Costco return line. But the cracks started showing when I noticed a vendor contract Carter pushed through with 0 approvals, inflated costs, and dates that didn't add up. When I brought it up in a finance meeting, just a hey, maybe we should double-check this invoice, I was met with a look from my father-in-law like I'd just spat in his scotch. You're reading too much into it, he said. Carter just chuckled and said something about how Megan's got trust issues. The old guard laughed like it was a roast, not a red flag. Anyway, before I go full Game of Thrones on these people, let me say one thing. If you're still listening and you've made it this far, first of all, thank you. Seriously. Second of all, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. 90% of you won't, I know, but it keeps this kind of storytelling going. And if you tap like 2, well, it keeps my petty little heart warm at night. Now where was I? Right, that vendor. I ran a background check, the address tied to the contract, a mailbox in Idaho, the LLC name traced back to an old fraternity buddy of Carter's. Classic, shell games and nepotism. I took it to compliance. They shrugged, I took it to legal. They said, we'll look into it. I took it to my father-in-law and that was the last straw. His face went tight. He said, this is family business. Let it lie, let it lie. That's when I knew. They weren't just sweeping it under the rug, they were building a new rug factory on top of it. And me? I was the problem that needed to be solved. Emails started disappearing from my inbox. Meeting invites accidentally left me off. The leadership dashboard. My dashboard had me removed as an admin. I'd gone from COO to ghost in under a week. They thought they were playing chess. I was building a damn guillotine. The contract showed up like a bad rash, quiet, irritating, and reeking of something festering beneath the surface. I was elbows deep in quarterly numbers, elbows deep being literal because our cloud-based reporting system still printed half the ledgers like it was 1997. Somewhere between cross-referencing freight surcharges and a line item for vendor equipment lease, my pen stopped moving. That number, $846,250, jumped off the page like it had been written in red ink and sarcasm. Vendor 7B Logistics, asset consolidation fee. Asset consolidation? For what? Golden forklifts? We just streamlined our Tennessee warehouse. That project came in under budget because I'd negotiated a deal on pre-owned equipment and restructured our storage model using verticals. There was no reason that vendors should have been charging us close to $1 million, not unless they were also offering free back rubs and lifetime therapy. I flagged it, made a note, and pulled the original contract. That's when the weirdness began. The document metadata showed the PDF had been modified 3 days after it was supposedly signed. Backdated approvals. Multiple versions. Approval chain skipped me entirely, which was odd, considering I was still listed as COO on paper. The e-signature on the final version? A sloppy scrawl from Carter's assistant. Not the CFO, not legal. Just Jake Kim, the same assistant who once asked if invoices expire like yogurt, so I brought it up. We're in our monthly finance sync, the one where the execs pretend to understand EBITDA while secretly checking golf scores. I said, hey, this 7B logistics line item looks off. I think we need to revisit the approval path. It looks like it skipped legal. My father-in-law didn't even look up from his coffee. It's handled. I blinked. Handled by who? Don't worry about it, Megan. Let's move on. Carter let out a little snort through his nose, like someone had just told a joke only he understood. You always make a thing out of nothing, he said, reaching for the pastry tray like he hadn't just vacuumed almost $1 million into the financial ether. But it was something. I knew it. My gut, trained by 10 years of sniffing out operational sinkholes, was already screaming like a smoke alarm. That night, after everyone went home to their power couples and Peloton instructors, I stayed late and dug. I found a paper trail colder than a January freezer truck. 7B Logistics was a shell. No website, no office. Just a P.O. box in Boise, Idaho, and a registered agent named Tanner Wells. Tanner Wells. Now, that might not mean much to you, but to me, that name hit like a thrown wrench. He was Carter's roommate at Michigan State. They once got arrested together for aggressive public urination, whatever that means. Last I heard, Tanner sold artisanal vape juice out of a storage unit and hosted Bitcoin seminars for people with neck tattoos. So why was he behind a vendor getting almost $1 million from our books? I ran it through Lexify Pro, one of those deep dive business lookup tools I keep in my back pocket for procurement audits. Tanner's name came up 3 times, each tied to short-lived LLCs, all conveniently registered a few months before major cargo quotient expansions. Different names, same pattern, overpriced service contracts. Vague scopes of work, dead websites. That night I sat on the couch in sweatpants, staring at my laptop like it owed me an explanation. My husband, bless his sweet, oblivious soul, came in holding a microwave burrito and asked if I wanted to watch The Voice. I said no. I said I had to work. He said, you always work. Yeah, well, somebody had to. I brought it up again, this time privately. I called my father-in-law, asked for 5 minutes of his time. He said sure, but his voice was tight like he already knew what I was going to say and had rehearsed his disinterest. I walked through it all calmly. The backdating, the shell company, the connections, the risk. And he just nodded, then said, Carter assures me it's legitimate. He's taking initiative. That's what we need. Initiative. Is that what we're calling white-collar embezzlement now? Then came the kicker. You're letting your personal bias cloud your judgment. He's family. There it was. Family, that word again. That convenient little velvet rope that always put me on the other side of the line. I was in the pictures, but not in the blood. After that, things started happening fast. Too fast. I was looped out of procurement emails. Calendar invites disappeared. My assistant said Carter had been assigning tasks in your name. My access to the internal risk dashboard? Revoked for security streamlining. Sure. But the piece that locked it all together came from Rochelle in accounting, sweet, straight-talking, absolutely fed up Rochelle. She pulled me aside in the stairwell like we were in some corporate spy thriller and said, you didn't hear it from me, but the Series C term sheet lists Carter as interim CEO. Word is, they're trying to finalize before the board meets next month. You're not on the invite. Oh, okay. That's when I realized I wasn't paranoid, I was just punctual. They weren't planning to exclude me, they already had. They were moving on without me, and I had 2 choices, fight them in the open or quietly build a bomb. Guess which one I picked? It started with a missing calendar invite, Monday morning. I opened my laptop, logged into our shared company dashboard. Nothing, my 9:30 with legal, gone. My 11 a.m. fleet expansion strategy session, vanished. The 2 p.m. HR policy update that I, not Carter, had been running point on for 3 straight quarters, ghosted. At first, I figured it was a sync issue, restarted the app, logged out, logged in. Cleared cookies like a desperate Girl Scout in denial, still nothing. Then came the kicker. I got a Slack from my assistant Ava. Hey, weird. But did someone else take over your vendor restructuring call? Carter just forwarded me a new deck for it and said I'd be supporting his presentation. My stomach dropped. His presentation? The room spun for a second, not from shock but from clarity. I'd seen this move before. Quiet displacement. The kind that doesn't get announced in a memo, just slowly wraps around you like a python made of fake smiles and reassignments. I went to check permissions on the Q3 files I'd uploaded last week. Access denied. You do not have permission to view this document. I wrote that document. By noon, I was no longer listed in the leadership group email thread. By 1 p.m., our new intern had forwarded me a meeting summary I was never invited to. By 3 p.m., my company credit card pinged an error when I tried to order lunch. Not declined, unauthorized. Carter was in my office by 4. He didn't knock. Just strolled in holding a cold brew and the kind of self-satisfied swagger you usually only see on reality TV divorce lawyers. He didn't sit. Just leaned against the filing cabinet like he was practicing for a Forbes cover shoot that would never happen. You look tense, he said. Must be the calendar gremlins, I replied, not even looking up. He laughed. Sometimes the system just self-corrects, you know? I looked up. That's when I saw it, that tiny smirk behind his eyes. The kind of grin that says, I already won. But here's the thing about people like Carter. They think control is a crown they can snatch off someone else's head. They forget it's welded into the damn skull if you built the kingdom from scratch. I didn't say anything else. I just closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out, past him, past the interns, past the break room where someone had stuck a post-it on the fridge reading Carter for CEO, with 3 passive-aggressive smiley faces underneath. Back at home, I cracked open a bottle of wine and my personal hard drive. If they wanted a war, I was going to start by digging trenches. First step, documentation. I screen-capped every access revocation, logged every blocked email, forwarded key documents to my legal counsel under whistleblower protocol, printed out every redlined contract Carter had pushed through since Q1. You don't spend a decade building systems without knowing where the tripwires are buried. Second step, the call list. See, while Carter was busy playing dictator, I'd been collecting quiet respect. Over the years, I'd handled crisis after crisis. Vendor meltdowns, labor disputes, tech rollouts that nearly bricked our entire West Coast operation. And every time I came through, which meant certain minority shareholders, folks with skin in the game but no seat at the table, trusted me. So I started making calls. First up was Arjun Patel, angel investor from our Series A, semi-retired now but still holding 6%. I walked him through what I'd found, the shell vendors, the internal access lockdown, the quiet coup brewing under everyone's noses. He didn't sound surprised. They think you won't fight, he said. They think you'll walk away because technically you married into it. That's their blind spot. Wouldn't be the first time, I muttered. Next was Marnie Fisher, old-school logistics shark who owned 4.5% and once told Carter to his face that she'd rather invest in feral raccoons than in him. She listened, let me rant, then said, they're preparing to cut you out before the Series C. I've seen this dance before. They'll try to finalize control just in time to hand over a puppet regime to the new investor group. I took a deep breath. And if I don't let them? She laughed. Then it gets very interesting. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, bathed in refrigerator light, chewing on the last of a stale protein bar and thinking. My husband had fallen asleep watching Shark Tank. I could hear Kevin O'Leary barking something about royalty deals in the background, but my mind was somewhere else, piecing together a strategy that would make Carter wish he'd stuck to selling snowmobiles in Aspen. I was done waiting. No more side hauls. No more polite nods and I'm just trying to help smiles. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave on my terms, or better yet, I'd stay. Long enough to tear their paper throne down, one proxy at a time. They always do it on a Monday. That's the thing about corporate executions. Gotta hit you before the coffee kicks in while your guard's still down and your Slack is full of weekend catch-ups. I was 10 minutes into our leadership sync when the screen layout changed. The usual grid of tired faces flickered and suddenly HR was there. Jennifer from HR with her signature pearl necklace and dead shark eyes. She never joins these. Never, I knew. My father-in-law cleared his throat, not the dry, polite one, the other one. The one that came before announcements, ultimatums, and the time he told Carter's ex-wife that prenups are just unspoken insults. This was that version of him. Megan, he said, his voice flat and formal, your services are no longer required at Cargo Quotient. A pause, then, effective immediately. HR will coordinate your transition. The air in the room changed. No sound, just that quiet electronic hum from 30 muted microphones and 100 unspoken gasps. I glanced around the table. Screens with frozen smiles, stiff shoulders, a few eyes darting to the corner of the Zoom interface like they were hoping this was some sort of system glitch. Then my gaze landed on Carter, leaning against the glass wall just off camera, arms crossed, sipping cold brew like it was the blood of the freshly conquered. The same damn smirk. Except this time, it wasn't just smug, it was victory. It was possession. He didn't just think he'd won. He thought I didn't see it coming, and for 1 second I let him believe it. I stood up slowly. No dramatic speech, no crying, no shaking voice asking why. I just unplugged my charger, coiled it neatly, placed it in my bag, closed my notebook, slid my pen into its loop like I was finishing a meeting, not my career. I looked at HR's little Zoom box. Jennifer nodded with the sincerity of a DMV printer. I smiled. Then I turned to my father-in-law, Mr. Rutherford, since that's what we were now, and said, understood. That's it, that was the moment. The humiliation they'd been planning. A public gutting designed to show Carter as the conquering hero and me as the discarded relic. A message to the board, to the team, to the investors. The new era begins now. And it might have worked, except for what happened next. I walked to the elevator. The hallway was silent. I swiped my badge one last time and heard the little click of the door unlocking. Behind me, footsteps. First it was Ava, my assistant, no hesitation. She grabbed her stuff and followed, then Derek from Ops, then Mara from Analytics, then Tim, then Janelle, then 30 more. One by one they stood. They didn't say a word. They didn't chant or make a scene. They just packed up and followed me out like the building itself had been drained of gravity, and I was the only thing left holding weight. Carter stepped into the hallway watching the parade, mouth slightly open, expression faltering. I passed him without breaking stride, then stopped, turned just enough to meet his eyes, and I mouthed it, slow, deliberate, nice timing, because here's the thing I'd already known. The board vote was today. Carter had orchestrated my firing to coincide with it, thinking it would be his coronation. That I'd be too gutted, too blindsided, too removed to matter. What he didn't know, my last email before that meeting had gone to the company's legal team, reminding them that I'd secured proxy control from key shareholders, and I'd be attending the vote remotely. And even better, every one of those 35 staff members now leaving with me? Witnesses. Witnesses to the very moment Carter celebrated while the house quietly burned behind him. In the parking garage, Ava looked at me and said, "So what now?" I just smiled, pressed the elevator button to the ground floor and said, "Now? Now we wait." I got home and didn't cry. Didn't scream, didn't throw a wine glass against the backsplash or call my husband with trembling hands. No drama, no meltdown, just the quiet hum of my fridge and the distant whine of a neighbor's leaf blower as I set my bag on the kitchen counter like I'd come back from a particularly disappointing dentist appointment. I made tea, Earl Grey double strong, sat at the table, took out the binder. It wasn't labeled, not on the outside. To anyone else, it looked like a stack of contracts or maybe divorce papers. But to me, it was leverage. It was bloodless revenge printed on premium weight paper. It was 31 signatures, 31 proxies, 31 silent alarms, wired and ready. The process had started weeks ago. It began with a hunch. Carter's little shell game contract with 7B Logistics had smelled like fraud, but the way my father-in-law shut it down, that was what told me the rot went all the way to the foundation. And when the CFO mistakenly forwarded me an internal memo that had my name absent from the Series C leadership lineup, well, that's when I started planting explosives. Quiet ones, legal ones. First was Arjun. I flew to Atlanta under the guise of client relations, took him to dinner and laid it out. Not just the Carter stuff, the decay, the complacency, the way we'd gone from strategic to sloppy under the current leadership. Arjun didn't argue. He just sipped his scotch, nodded, and said, "You'll need 14% to stall, 26% to threaten, over 30%. And they can't ignore you." I nodded. He handed me his proxy on the spot. After that, it was a domino rally. Marnie Fisher was next. She was on vacation in Maui and still took my call at 2 a.m. her time. "Carter's a liability," she said before I'd even finished my pitch. "I've seen people like him sink ships from the captain's chair. Send me the paperwork." Then there was the Reed Group. 6 siblings who owned a combined 8.5% and hadn't agreed on a single damn thing since their father died. But they all agreed on one thing: Carter was not the future. By the time the third week rolled around, I had 32%. Not officially, not on a shareholder update, but legally. Each signed form gave me temporary proxy authority for the upcoming vote. Silent, private, no board notification required. Why? Because unlike Carter, I'd read the fine print in the shareholder agreement. Proxy authority was allowed without board notice so long as it was disclosed to corporate counsel no less than 48 hours before a major vote. It was buried in Section 9.3 of the bylaws. Carter never read anything longer than an Instagram caption. He didn't stand a chance. And that last email before the meeting today, the one I sent 5 minutes before HR logged on to gut me, was to General Counsel. Subject line: proxy notice for upcoming vote Megan Rutherford. One sentence. No flourish. In accordance with Section 9.3, please note I will be attending today's vote remotely as authorized proxy for the following shareholders. Attached was the full list. 31 names, dated, signed, scanned. I didn't need to be in the building. I didn't even need to be on camera. I just needed the right eyes to read the right lines at the right time. Timing had always been Carter's fatal flaw. My phone buzzed, a text from Marnie. "Marnie, if this goes sideways, we walk, all of us, then another." Arjun, investor rep, is already nervous. Says VC team is asking about stability. We play this right, Carter's done by EOD. I took another sip of tea, cool now. The sky outside was a soft gray, like the city was holding its breath. I opened my laptop, logged into the secure investor portal, pulled up the vote access credentials, tested the mic, checked my camera, turned it off. Let them think I was gone. Let them celebrate. Because there's a special kind of satisfaction in watching your enemies toast their own victory, right before the floor drops out. The boardroom smelled like victory and stale cologne. Carter's brand. He'd sprayed himself in confidence that morning, maybe even practiced his CEO smile in the mirror while rehearsing lines like, "This is a new chapter for Cargo Quotient," or "We're stronger, leaner, and future-focused." He'd ordered pastries. The good ones, still warm in the box, like this was a celebration instead of a slaughter. The preferred VC firm, Redstone Capital, sat at the far end of the table, sleek and hungry. Their lead partner, Chelsea Ewan, wore a watch worth more than our Nashville fleet and hadn't blinked once since she walked in. She didn't care about family drama or office politics. She cared about control. Specifically, Carter in the CEO chair. That was her clause, her ask, her price for the money. Before we begin, Carter said, standing like a high school senior about to give a valedictorian speech he didn't write, I just want to say how excited we are for this partnership. Cargo Quotient is ready for the next phase. His father nodded, stone-faced. Company patriarch co-signing his own irrelevance. They didn't ask about me, didn't mention me, I was gone. Old news. No longer employed meant no voice, no vote, no veto, or so they thought. General counsel sat halfway down the table, flipping through a binder of documents prepared for the vote, shared distribution, proxy records, investor acknowledgements. Routine stuff, except for one tab, one tiny detail. A junior associate named Haley, first year out of law school, barely out of orientation, raised her hand halfway through the procedural motion. Sorry, before we proceed, I just need to clarify something on the proxy ledger, she said, voice shaking slightly. There's a line here under Class B proxies that shows, well, there's one assigned to M. Rutherford, dated 2 weeks ago. The air tensed. Carter's lips twitched. He didn't even turn toward her. Just waved a hand like he was batting away a mosquito. She's gone, terminated. That proxy's invalid. Haley frowned. It's not listed as revoked, and it's within the legal notice window. It's also signed by Reed Group Holdings, which I said it doesn't matter. Chelsea Ewan finally turned her head, just slightly. Reed Group Holdings has 8.5%, correct? General counsel adjusted his glasses. That's correct. And if this proxy is still active, combined with others, you may need to pause until we clarify the final vote tally. Carter exhaled, exasperated. This is exactly the kind of thing that's holding us back. Megan's gone. She has no standing. She doesn't even work here. General counsel didn't blink. She doesn't need to. Shareholder proxy authority is independent of employment status. As long as it was filed correctly and within the timeline, Haley interrupted, voice stronger now. It was. Filed 47 hours before the vote. Timestamped. Signed. Carter's eyes darted to his father, who now looked less stone-faced and more like he was watching his birthday cake roll off the table in slow motion. Chelsea leaned back slightly. I'd like to know the total vote percentage controlled by this proxy. Another flip of the binder, pages whispering like dry leaves. General counsel read quietly for a second. Then again, his hand stopped mid-page. No one spoke. He turned to Carter, slowly. There are 31 signed proxies assigned to Megan Rutherford, including Reed, Patel Group, and Fisher Holdings. That puts her total voting power at, pause, a blink, approximately 51.2%. Silence. Carter laughed, not a real laugh. The kind of laugh you make when your brain is short-circuiting and you hope noise will stall the apocalypse. This is ridiculous. There's no way, she's not even here. The door didn't open. No triumphant walk-in. No dramatic music, just a low ding from the conference call speaker. General counsel pressed the button. A voice came through, calm, clear, unmistakable. Hi everyone, Megan Rutherford here. Just wanted to confirm I'm present and voting as proxy on behalf of the listed shareholders in Section 9.3. No hello, no small talk, just business, just blood. Chelsea smiled for the first time all morning. Well then, she said, folding her hands, this just got interesting. The vote was supposed to be a formality. That's what Carter told everyone. Nothing but rubber stamping. He'd bragged to Redstone's team the night before over a steak dinner and 2 bottles of overpriced Bordeaux. Dad steps back, I step in, the check clears. Easy. But now, 10 minutes before the signatures hit the page, the boardroom door banged open so hard it rattled the wall clocks. Haley, the junior associate from legal, came flying in like the floor was lava. Her heels skidded across the marble, hair a mess, a red binder clutched to her chest like it contained nuclear launch codes. Everyone froze. Chelsea Ewan didn't even turn her head. She just sipped her espresso and waited. Sorry, Haley gasped. This just came from compliance. It was in the misfiled audit folder. I think, she slapped the binder onto the table. I think we have a situation. General counsel opened it, saw the cover page, blinked. Active proxy assignments Megan Rutherford. He flipped a page, then another, then another. His fingers slowed like they were moving through wet cement. His mouth parted, then closed again. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet you could hear the HVAC. 31, what? Carter snapped, voice sharp now. She holds 31 active proxies, all valid, all dated and filed under compliance protocol. Signed by Reed, Fisher, Patel, multiple Class B stakeholders. A pause, then he read the number out loud. 32%, you could feel it like someone just punched the room in the lungs. General counsel kept flipping. With the Reed and Fisher blocks, he trailed off, looked up slowly. That's 51.2%, the silence cracked, a chair squeaked. Someone in the back dropped a pen. Carter's eyes darted from face to face, searching for a rescue that wasn't coming. This is insane, he stammered. She doesn't even work here anymore, she's just bitter. Chelsea didn't look at him, she was watching the numbers. General counsel cleared his throat. Per the bylaws, she's well within her rights. Proxy authority is non-contingent on employment. There's precedent. No, Carter said, louder now. This is sabotage. We have a vote. We need to proceed. Another voice crackled from the speakerphone. Go right ahead, I said, crisp, calm, surgical. Carter's face turned the color of wet chalk. I'm present as proxy for a majority of voting shares. Proceed with the motion, I continued, and I'll be logging my votes accordingly. Chelsea stood up. She didn't say anything dramatic, didn't make a scene. just closed her folder, slid it into her briefcase, and turned to my father-in-law. We'll revisit the terms, she said flatly. Your internal governance clearly isn't settled. He tried to respond, but the words collapsed in his throat like scaffolding under a wrecking ball. Carter looked like he'd swallowed a bottle of vinegar. You can't just back out. We had a deal. Chelsea raised an eyebrow. You had assumptions. Then she walked out. One of her analysts followed, eyes wide. The rest of the board sat frozen, as if moving would acknowledge what had just happened. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Not even Carter's loyal lapdogs were suddenly very interested in their cuticles. My voice came through the speaker again, this time lower, slower. I'd advise you all to review the shareholder agreement, particularly Clause 7.4 on majority proxy blocks. I'll wait while you read. The chair next to Carter's creaked as the lead investor, Martin Holbrook, old money conservative, who once said optics matter more than math, stood up. He reached into his satchel, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the table toward General Counsel. We're withdrawing, he said. Too much chaos, too much risk. Carter's mouth opened, but Holbrook was already walking. And just like that, the air changed. Not loud, not explosive, just unraveling, one thread at a time. 30 seconds ago, Carter was the king-elect. Now he was just a man in a chair, watching the crown slide into someone else's hands. Mine. The vote never happened. Not officially. Not with quorum. Not with confidence. Once Chelsea left and Holbrook withdrew, the oxygen in the room turned poisonous. Carter tried to rally, spinning words like temporary delay and procedural hiccup, but no one was buying it. Not the board, not legal, and definitely not the VC firm whose exit footsteps were still echoing down the hallway. What was supposed to be a crowning ceremony turned into a wake. You could smell it in the coffee, cold and untouched. Just like the untouched resolution packet still sitting in front of Carter, his name printed in bold beneath the title Interim CEO Appointee. No one picked it up. No one said motion to proceed. No second, no vote, just a silence so thick you could have laminated it. By the end of the day, Redstone had formally suspended negotiations. Pending governance stabilization, the email said, corporate for your bleeding from the head, and we're not giving you a band-aid. Holbrook pulled his advisory position, citing material inconsistency in leadership direction. The Fisher siblings requested an emergency shareholder meeting to review board appointments. And just like that, the Series C was ice cold. Inside HQ, the dominoes started to fall. Carter's pet executive, Troy Whitman, the grinning shark who once called me emotionally high maintenance for asking why $90,000 went missing from the marketing budget, resigned quietly by lunchtime. His goodbye email was a single sentence. No emojis, no cupcakes in the break room. Then the HR door started revolving. Not loudly, not with box-carrying dramatics, but quietly, methodically. Internal audits, security badge revocations, calendar optimization discussions. The kind of phrases that mean you're being erased, but in a font so polite you almost thank them for it. Rumors spread fast. By 3 p.m., someone had wiped Carter's name off the leadership roster on our internal site. Just gone. A cached version still showed him, grinning like a toothpaste ad, but the new version? Blank. I was at home again, same kitchen, same binder. The lighting was different now, golden hour washing across the windows like the universe was applauding in soft applause. My phone buzzed. General Counsel, 3:12 p.m. We may need to talk. Soon. I stared at it for a moment and typed back. Me, 3:14 p.m. Make sure you've cleared his desk first. No emoji, no signature, just that. It was delicious watching it all unravel without lifting a finger. The beauty of a well-laid trap is that once it springs, you don't have to gloat. The consequences speak for you. And Carter, he was radioactive now. Investors weren't taking his calls. Board members were suddenly unavailable for further comment. His father, the same man who barked me out of the company like a stray dog, was suddenly silent in every thread, every channel, every platform. But not out of loyalty, out of fear. Because once the funding fell through, the real panic began. We were leveraged, deep. Series C wasn't just fuel, it was a life raft. The expansion plan Carter had pitched to the board involved hiring commitments, facility builds, fleet leases, all dependent on the incoming cash. Without it, debt, missed projections, investor panic, and a leadership crisis on record. One of the junior managers sent me a screenshot later that night from Slack. Someone had updated the Q3 objectives board. Under the column Executive Review next to Carter's name, someone had added a sticky note emoji and 2 words, vacancy pending. I didn't laugh, not out loud, but I did pour myself a second glass of wine, stood at the window, watched the sun drag its tired body down past the skyline, and in that golden silence I finally exhaled. Not because it was over, because now it was mine. It took 14 days, that's it. 14 days from the moment I was publicly gutted in a boardroom I helped design to the moment my inbox pinged with the subject line, reinstatement resolution passed effective immediately. Not coup, not VP of nothing. Executive chair. Motion had been led by Holbrook himself, same man who walked out during the failed vote like he was stepping over a body in the street. The Reed siblings followed. Marnie cast her lot with me before the ink dried. And Arjun, bless his spreadsheet-loving soul, wrote me a message that simply read, some thrones are built, some are earned. The board couldn't deny it. Not the numbers, not the proxies, not the exodus of investors ready to bolt if Carter stayed another day. Even General Counsel, who had once politely ignored my calendar removals, sent a follow-up that included a personally signed apology and a digital bottle of champagne. Carter was out. No exit ceremony, no farewell email, no LinkedIn post thanking the team for a transformative journey. Just a quiet HR escort, a deactivated badge, and a final note to staff that said his role had concluded as part of strategic restructuring. Strategic. Indeed, my father-in-law stepped down the next day. To spend more time with family, the announcement read, though the only thing he'd be spending more time with was the look of stunned disbelief permanently etched into his mirror. I didn't ask for a welcome party. No balloons, no catered muffins or awkward she's back, banners and Comic Sans. I just showed up. 8:47 a.m., Monday morning, same building, same marble lobby, same security guard who blinked like he was seeing a ghost when I swiped my badge and it turned green again. The elevator ride was quiet. Just me, my coffee, and the binder. When the doors opened onto the executive floor, a few heads popped up over cubicles. Some whispered, some stared, some stood up. I walked to my office, opened the door, and saw it exactly how I left it, pristine, polished, missing the oxygen I used to breathe into the place. I stood there for a second, then turned and walked straight into the boardroom, the room where they fired me, where Carter grinned, where I bled in silence and 35 people followed me out like gravity had shifted. It looked smaller now. Funny how power warps perspective. The same chair waited at the head of the table. No one sat in it. They'd left it empty, maybe out of awkwardness, maybe superstition. Like the ghost of that meeting still haunted the space. I didn't hesitate, walked straight to it, sat down, placed the binder on the glass. The room fell silent. Executives shuffled in one by one, new and old. Some from the old guard, freshly humbled. Some I'd promoted in the past week, loyal, sharp, and finally seen. People like Ava, who'd stayed late rebuilding the operations dashboard when Carter wiped my name from the system. People like Mara, who fixed procurement and never once got credit for it. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was reclamation. Control rebuilt piece by piece. Loyalty returned with interest. The kind of power you don't demand, you earn in scars and receipts. I looked around the room, no speech, no gloating. Just this, some people inherit power, I said calmly. I prefer to earn it, they nodded. No applause, no dramatic music, just quiet understanding. Then I opened the binder. The same one that undid Carter, tanked the vote, and froze a $70 million funding round. I looked down at the agenda, then up at the room, and said, let's vote. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.